Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
Let's welcome today's speaker, MARILYN.
I'm back up here again. I'm MARILYN, alcoholic. Somebody said, thank you, Don. Thank you very much. You only called me 12 times before I got here today. It's like, here's where you're going to park, and here's what you're going to... And he told me yesterday I had to wear a dress. You know, I didn't want to wear a dress, so I had to go out and buy a dress. So I got to do whatever Don says, you know. There was a quote that said, you have to go within or you will go without. And that's what AA is about for me. It's, you know, you have to totally, radically change your consciousness. And, you know, like it says in the big book, there's these big emotional displacements and rearrangements, and you have to give up your old ideas, your old thinking about yourself. And 26 years, I can tell you that I've done it, which is so amazing. It's just... You know, I want to pinch myself. I can't believe that I am where I am today. So the beginning is, I grew up in an alcoholic family. My mother's mother hung herself when my mom was 16, and my mom found her in the garage. So, you know, she was mentally disturbed all of her life. And then my father was an alcoholic, and he killed himself when I was 6. And then there's other suicides, but those are the two big ones. And, you know, I'm Swedish and Irish, and the Swedes kill themselves and the Irish get drunk, you know. It's like, and I've been suicidal all my life. You know, it's really the last 5 years that I'm not that way anymore. And I never thought that would go away. Because what they did is when life got too tough, they just offed themselves. And so when life's gotten tough for me, I just wanted to die. But I never did it, and I'm standing here. I didn't. But so after my father died, my mother. I'm an only child. My mother really didn't want me, but she'd had an abortion before me, and she was Catholic, so she didn't abort me. And then she sent me to boarding school. I'm an only child, and for 3 years after my dad died, and then she brought me back home and married this mean, cruel, abusive man, and. That's when, and I was baptized Catholic, so that's when I really didn't believe in God at all. There's no God that's going to have my father die, and then this man who's so mean. And, he made me sit on the floor and eat if I ate too fast, and beat me with a belt and a brush and washed my mouth out. He just did all kinds of terrible things. And I just knew, like somebody said, if you're not loved, then you're going to have shame. And I have a lot of shame for not being loved. I mean, my whole life has just been filled with lots and lots of shame. You know, that I'm not enough, that I'm not good enough. And for years, I've struggled with that. And what I have today is I have a sponsor. I have Roz, who's, like, even though she's not old enough to be my mother, she's like the mother I never had. And I feel loved today. Oh, it took so many years. A lot of years. So I got drunk the first time when I was 5 years old. My father, my real father, you know, was an alcoholic, and he gave me some beer, and I threw up, and I'll never forget, I threw up, and I went to bed, and I thought, and the next day I want to do that again because that's something to do with my dad, you know? And so So in high school, I didn't drink that much, Thanks, Russ. In high school, I didn't drink that much because I was so afraid of my parents. They were so cruel, and if I came home like 5 minutes late, I'd get grounded for 2 weeks, and so I was really afraid. I was incarcerated. That's really what I was for 18 years. I really was, and I didn't get to be who I am. I had to be what they wanted me to be, and I was popular in school, which was good, but I still had to be somebody else, and I was from the wrong side of the tracks. This sounds like a soap opera, but it's not. It's really not. So I didn't really start drinking until college, and I went to San Jose State, which at that time was a party school, and we had this big bucket, and we put everything in it. And I don't know what was in it, but they called it a spoli-oli. I still remember that. It was like set, and you threw up because it was everything in there, But I just loved drinking. And I started taking speed. I started taking speed when I got into college, and I loved speed. I loved diet pills. I loved anything that would. And I'm an A personality to begin with, so I was like, the road runner. It's like. But I needed that. I needed something because I hated myself with a passion. I really, literally hated. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't tall enough. I didn't have long legs. I wasn't this. I wasn't that. I used to sit in bed when I was in high school and dream that I would take each of my friends' body parts and put them together, and then I'd be happy, It's like always I thought if the outside was good, that the inside would change. It never, ever did. So anyway, I moved to New York when I was 21, and I had this job here, and the woman wanted me to go to New York with her, so I went to New York with her, and then I borrowed her dress. It was this gorgeous pink dress, and I went and got another job, and then that's what I was like. Whatever was going to take care, and she was so hurt. I borrowed this gorgeous dress, and then, anyway, I moved to New York, and that was the beginning. I was living on the East Side, and our building was full of New York Giants, and it was like they called it the Stew Zoo, and every night we were in another party and got to go to all the football games and sit in the front row, and it was lots of fun. Isn't it great we get to keep all our memories? It's just some of the good ones, some of the bad ones. And then I met this man who was a manager of a bar, and he was married before and had 3 kids. 13 years older than me, and I fell madly in love, and I married him, which was the biggest mistake. And, I went to work every day, and then I went to sleep, and then I went out and stayed out all night and drank all night, and it got worse and worse and worse. And then when I moved to New York and got this job, one of our clients was a future president of the United States. Now, I'm 21, I moved to New York, I'm feeling like I've told you how I feel about myself, and all of a sudden we're handling the future president. I mean, I was so scared. I didn't want anybody to know how I felt about myself, so I had a drink. And the drugs, I just loved the drugs, and I couldn't go out of the house without having 2 drinks or 3 drinks. And then when he became president, my father, the man who I worked for was like my father. He gave me away when I got married, and then he died. He died of cancer, and so we were all going to go to the White House. I was going to work for the secretary, and my husband was going to be Secret Service, and my boss was going to be head of Treasury. I was going to go to Washington, D.C., and never happened. So anyway, I kept drinking and drinking and drinking. I mean, my story, there's just so many things that I did. I went to so many parties, and I'm only handling wealthy people. And I come from where I told you I come from. And it's like, how did this happen that I got in this crowd? And so anyway, after he died, I worked for somebody else, and we came out to California, and we're business managers and handled huge amounts of people. We started with maybe 10 clients, and we had 60 clients. And oh my God, the more famous people were around me, the more scared I got, and the more, oh God, and I got suicidal, and I was just a mess. And I was out one night with this client had a big party, and there was a friend of his who was kind of like flirting with me, and he just got his new Ferrari. So he said he was going to take me home, and he took me home, and I threw up all over the car. my God. And I went to bed. I thought, oh, I'm going to get fired. I know my boss is going to fire me. Oh, my God. And, I threw up all the time. I wasn't the kind of drunk that could hold it. I mean, I can't remember. I believe how many times I threw up. And so I stayed with this boss, and God, there's so many things that happened. I just can't remember. I can't remember them now, but my life got bigger and bigger, and I made more money, and I was becoming more successful. And the ism, I sabotaged myself. I had wonderful opportunities for great relationships. I sabotaged them. Every time there was a great guy in my life, I did something to push him away. Because I've always been afraid to let somebody really in. To really let somebody in all the way to the core is just it hasn't been something that I've been able to do. And maybe I never will. So anyway, I worked for him for 15 years, and what a time that was. And then I decided to quit. I don't know why. I had this great job, fabulous job, making all kinds of money, and I decided to quit. Because you know why? There was a big pension plan, and I wanted that money in that pension plan. So I quit, and I got this money in the pension plan. And then what do? I meet this guy who's a drunk, and wow, he had a 6-pack of beer before he went to work. Before I went to work in the morning. Anyway, and he was in a yacht club in the marina. So anyway, it got worse and worse and worse, and then I wasn't working, and I was living off the money that I'd made on my pension plan. And then he left me for an older woman who had more money than I did. And I called her Grandma. And when I got to be that age, I didn't want to call myself Grandma. I was so hurt, and it's like, wow. And if I had there I go back. If I had the money and I looked right and I had all this, then, he wouldn't leave me. That's what I thought about my dad. If I'd been better, he would have never left me. And so what happened is I got a job with an actress and to run her finances. And the day that I went in to interview, I knew her agent, and he said, we went downstairs afterwards, and he said, you're not going to drink on this job. And he knew me, and that's when I stopped. It was March 31st, 1988. And I don't know what happened. I know a lot of us have been struck sober. I was literally struck sober. I knew I was ready to go bankrupt. I'd lost everything. I thought that everything in my life was because of my mother and my stepfather, so I blamed my mother and my stepfather for everything. I didn't have a conscious breath. I don't think my mother ever had a conscious breath in the 80 years that she lived. But I didn't. I was always trying to be somebody else and blaming everything in my life on my mother. So there was no Marilyn. There was never any Marilyn. And then I liked being with all these celebrities. So then I thought I was a big shot. I wasn't a big shot. So I know some people. But I mean, God, it was awful. And the ego got worse, and then I got angry, and then I got bitchy, and then I got people who worked for me, hated working for me. Just like I said, Valerie's working for me for 6 years, and she still loves me. And what I love about Valerie is, Valerie's been with me for 6 years, and then she's leaving because she's going back to college to get her degree in accounting. And when she started with me, she wanted to be a nurse, and now she wants to be an accountant. I'm so happy she's leaving. And if anybody else had ever left me, I want to kill him. I didn't want to be nice. And I'm so different. And so, anyway, I got that job, and I got sober, and my life changed. My life totally changed. Not for a long time. The first 5 years I cried. I was so angry. I was just full of rage. There was this guy in this room, and he started to fall asleep in the meeting, and I hit him. And I was so mad, and somebody wasn't paying attention. I'd yell at him, and if somebody talked, I was so mad. I would scream into pillows. I would scream oh God, you just have no idea how bad I was. I was just, because all that rage from all that life of never being able to be who I wanted to be, to have no consciousness, to just want the stuff. There's this expression Einstein says, I only want to know the mind of God, and the rest is detail. I just want to know what God's will is for me, and all that money and the stuff, it's all details. Because if I don't have my God consciousness, I'm not going to have any of that stuff, because I had it all. And I've had clients all my life that have had everything, and they weren't happy. So, I've really learned a lesson so deep. And so anyway, after that job, I got fired. I never got fired when I was drinking. Then I got fired. What? So I got fired after 5 years of sobriety, and then I worked for 3 billionaires. 3 billionaires again. There we go again, and this kind of crowd and feeling. And so my first 5 years of sobriety, I was angry, I was rageful, I was crying, I was trying to get it out. And then I went to ACA, Adult Children of Alcoholics, and thought, okay, I got to get rid of my mother stuff in here, and then I'll be better. Well, that didn't happen. I went to Codependents Anonymous. I went to Debtors Anonymous. I went to Sex Anonymous, or Sex whatever. I had all of those addictions. The funny thing about life is just whatever it was that I could get, so I didn't have to feel the pain. And I got this wonderful sponsor when I first got sober, and I had her for 15 years, and then she died. I mean, it's just really hard when people go. So anyway, this sobriety, what's happened is, for the first 5 years, it was crying and screaming and hollering. Then Wendy would have these workshops at her house with the big book, and they'd be a year-long workshops doing the steps, and I think we did 2 or 3 of those. And then I read the big book more, and I went to more meetings, and I spoke. And then I sponsored, and guess what? The first person I got as a sponsee, she went out and died. I mean, it was like she was this beautiful woman, and she was sober, and she went on this, she had the liver extension. She was a liver transplant, and she called me that day, and I couldn't take the call, and then she went out and drank, and she died. And, that was the first one. So, it was, nobody really wanted me to be my sponsor after the first one died. I think it's funny, maybe. I mean, my experience in death is just all over the place. It's just all over the place. And so you have to understand, that's why I didn't want to let anybody in. There was just one death after another. I wasn't going to let that happen to me again. I just couldn't. And through sobriety, there's been so many things. I had cancer 4 years ago, and I was so lucky that it was stage 1, and I kept all my body parts, and and then I fell 2 years ago, and I had a fractured pelvis, and I got over that, and I've lost. And then I had another job that I got fired from for sexual harassment. Now, can I tell you, this woman, she had this big fat ass, and I took my hand and I patted her on the ass when she was at the file cabinet. I just did this. So she goes to my doctor and says, she can't walk, she can't talk, because she wanted to get money from my boss. Anyway, I got fired. And that was the worst thing. And he had to fire me. There was because she was going to do this lawsuit. But out of the worst things that happened, the best things happened. What happened is he fired me, and I decided to start my own business. And now in 1985, I had started my business. I was still drinking, and somebody gave me a whole bunch of money. And I opened an office in Beverly Hills, and I furnished it, and I was all excited, and I didn't even have a client. I opened the office. So then I was drinking every day and on my couch, and, the business failed a year later. I mean, that was really the wrong way to start a business. And then in 2001, it was right after the 9/11, I started my business. This time, I started out of my house. I had a computer, I had somebody part-time, And it grew and grew and grew, and now I've had it for almost 13 years, and it's very successful, and I did that myself. I did it myself. And, you know, how I want to sabotage all the time, you know, I haven't really sabotaged. Well, Valerie will probably tell you I haven't sometimes. But it feels so good to have done something, because, you know, my parents said to me, you know, would type and take shorthand, and, you know, maybe you'll get a job. And I have my own business, and they're dead. You know, my father died, my stepfather died, and I went to see him for his last breath. He was in a coma when I got there, and he had made amends to me, but my mother never made amends. She was disappointed in who I was, and I didn't go to her funeral. When she died, there was one person there, the person who takes care of her money. And then what happened was they died with over 7 figures, and they left the money to charity, you know. So I get the interest, but when I die, it all goes to charity. So, you know, it's been a long, hard road. And I know by the work that I've done, is like I found a God. I always wanted my will. It's not my will now, it's God's will. And my will, people always ask, what's God's will and what's my will? Well, my will is that when I have a thought, I get to make a decision to go to the light or go to the dark. I still have those thoughts. I have emotions that come up. I had an emotion come up the other day. And when they come up, sometimes I don't know how to handle them, because that's one of the reasons I didn't want to have them at all, is because I didn't know if I can handle them, or they'd be so difficult I wouldn't be able to survive. And now when they come up, I just take a breath and I go to God. You know, when you grow up in a family where everything is pushed and nobody ever talks about anything, and you're just, I wish you weren't here, and, you know, if you'd been different, we could have loved you. You know, the kind of things. And then all of a sudden you start to love yourself. And it's the weirdest thing. And I love you, Roz. I have Roz, and, you know, she's so helpful. You know, to have, you know, it hurts to have love. It hurts, but it hurts good. And, you know, I want more of it. And so Roz has, like, taught me every time I have something really bad happen, you know, I call Roz. And, like, I told her I was nervous about speaking here, which is so funny, I'm not. So I told her I was nervous. She's like, I got nothing to say to you. But that helped. She says, I got nothing to say. But I just know that the more that I do this work, the more that I trust in God, and the more that every day that I get up and I read the big book and I read whatever I read and I go to my meetings, and I've sponsored people, but I haven't been a good sponsor, you know, because I'm afraid of getting so close. And what I really hate is when people put me on a pedestal. I hate it, because then I have to perform. And what happens if I don't perform? And so it's been a hard thing for me, but I have done it, and I do want to do it. But the greatest thing is my sponsor used to say, you have facts, feelings, and options. And what's your motive? So, you know, the facts are that I'm sharing here today, and there's a lot of people I love in here. And the feelings are, you know, when I first get up here, I'm nervous, and I want to be perfect and whatever, and I'm not. And then, you know, the options are just be with God. Be with God. Just enjoy it. Or in the old days, well, I'm going to run away, or I'm not going to talk to somebody. You know, I used to get mad at somebody. I never talked to them again. You know, this week, I'm going to share everything. This week, I have cats. I've always had cats since I'm like 5 years old. So I have these 2 cats who are just 2 years old. And one of them peed on my bed. Now, you know what I wanted to do? Put them both under. I was going to call the vet and put them under. So Valerie says, how can you do that, Marilyn? How can you do that? So, you know, the truth is, when I thought about it, I don't want them to die, but I want to get rid of them. And, you know, that's what people did in my life. They just got rid of me. And so that's what I used to do. And, you know, there's no accent that I'm alone, because I was always getting rid of people, you know, and then they were getting rid of me. And, you know, but I have a great sense of humor, and I have a great love of life, and I know that I've learned so much, and I do want to be more of service, and I am of service to my clients. they're all crazy, and they all need me very much, but I need to be more service in Alcoholics Anonymous, which Roz is always saying to me, you know, and I'm hoping that that's going to happen. And then, you know, the other thing is changing these concepts and these beliefs and these attitudes. You know, that's what they're saying in AA about having this spiritual awakening, is that you have to change all of those ideas about yourself. And it takes a long, long time. People would rather do anything than go inside and change, because, as I said before, the fear was it would be so insurmountable that I wouldn't be able to handle it. And now it's like, whatever I have to share, somebody's been through it. I mean, Roz has been through everything. And you've helped me through everything. And, you know, I never wanted to have any children because I thought if I ever had a child that she'd grow up just like me. And I didn't want anybody on this planet to feel like I did. And now, wouldn't it be nice to have somebody that I could love and care about? You know, it's like, it's so painful to be this age and to just start to feel in the last couple of years. You know, 3 years ago, I was very, very depressed. I was suicidal. I was as close to dying as I'd ever been. And I went to this place in San Diego for a month, and it was like a rehab. And I don't know what happened. It must be the grace of God. I haven't wanted to do anything to myself since then. But I always, as I said, had that out. If it's this painful, I just want to leave. And Roz was always with me every time I got into those deep, deep, dark places. She was always there to love me. And you know, when you haven't had that and you do have it, it's just, it feels so good. Because, you know, I do believe in God. I don't know if God really loves me, but I trust him. You know, there's something about what's happened in my life that I'm still here after all the stuff that I've gone through and all of that I'm still here. It must mean that he loves me. And you know, those synchronicities that you have, you know, there's no such thing as accidents. It's God's way of remaining anonymous. When those things happen, you know that there's a God. It's like you run into somebody you haven't seen in 20 years and they say some nice things about you. You know, I'm still friends with, it's so funny, I'm still friends with my girlfriends from high school. And I graduated from high school many, many years ago. And we get together every year. Okay, we get together every year. And do you know how wonderful that is? And they really love me, and they remember how hard it was. They said, your mother was so mean. She never let you do anything. And, you know, it's so funny. One of my girlfriends I went to my senior prom with, and she said, you know, after the prom, we wanted to go out, and your mother said, no, you had to come home. She said, she was such a bitch. You know, they remember that from that many years ago. And they know me, and they still love me. So I know that there's a path, and I know the path is God, and I know the only way that I'm going to remain sober is to stick with my sponsor, stick with AA, stick with all of you, and I just know that at the this is the only thing to do. And thanks for letting me share. Are there any questions?
Did your stepfather ever explain why he was so mean, and what did you do to forgive him?
I asked, what's the question? Did my stepfather explain why he was so mean to me, or did I ever forgive him? Yes. How did I forgive him? Well, after I got sober, he apologized. He said he apologized for treating me so poorly, and I said, why? And he said, I don't know, because he never was conscious himself. You know, he didn't know. He just said, I don't know, I'm sorry. And you know, when he died, he got cancer, and he was so sick, and it ended up in his brain, and they were living in Arizona, and I went down to see him. Each time I saw him, and I saw how little he was. You know, when you're small, they're so big, and then when they're dying, they're so small. And, you know, I just forgave him. And I laid in bed until he took his last breath, and I just knew that he was a person, but he couldn't love. His mother didn't love him. You know, what is it about this ability that we can't love? I just, you know. Anyway, thank you. Another question? Hi.
Hi. Can you talk about some of the amends, some significant amends you made to other people?
Oh, yeah. Well, I had a lot of, what were the amends that I made to people? Thanks. I had a lot of financial amends, huge amounts of financial amends. And I had stolen from my boss that was like my father. And my sponsor made me do the hardest amend first. And I had to go to him. And he said, I didn't know. It was the only thing he said, I didn't know. He didn't get mad. You know, I thought he would like want to shoot me or kill me. And he just said, I didn't know. And, you know, I made the amends to him. And I tried to make amends to my mother. And what I did is I wrote her a letter first, thinking that that might help to open it up. And she never acknowledged that she got the letter. She never accepted that I was a drunk. I couldn't be a drunk. So I made a lot of other amends. Most of them were financial. And then there was a lot to friends that I had abandoned and said, you know, I don't want to be your friend anymore because you pissed me off. And, you know, there was this one friend, I remember her knocking on the door saying, please, please be my friend. And I said, I'm not going to talk to you. So I had to make amends to a lot of people like that because I wasn't a nice person. I was not a nice person. And I can stand here today and say I am. So thanks. Is there any? Hi. Is that my phone? Sorry. Do I have a daily practice that keeps me sober? Yes, I do. I get up every morning and I say the 3rd step and the 7th step prayer, and I read from one of my books. I got a lot of books that I read, and I meditate for at least 10 minutes. That's the most I can do. I can't keep my mind. And through the day, whenever I make mistakes, because I'm still hard on myself when I make mistakes, but whenever I make mistakes, is like at that moment, I have to deal with it. What did I do? What's my part? I have to do that every single day, because in work there's always stuff happening. And I'll sit down, won't I? I'll sit down and I'll say, okay, where's my part? What can I do different? And that way I can sit here today, I'm standing, and say that I don't have any resentments today, because I got to deal with it when it happens. And that's the 10th step, and it works. Hi.
Was there any suggestion that you were given or step or anything that you were particularly resistant to in early sobriety or later?
Any step I was resistant to, early sobriety?
Any suggestion you just didn't?
Oh, yeah, suggestion. Do 4 and 5 and 8 and 9. I said, no way. I'm not going to do an inventory. I'm not going to think of those things that happened to me. But when I did them, you know what? It's so funny. When you do them, they're easy. I mean, it's the fear that keeps us from wanting to do this stuff. And then once you do it, your sponsor says, you know, I've heard everything you've said. Everybody's done everything. I haven't done anything you guys haven't done. And so that was the resistance, you know. It's always the resistance inside, because I had such self-hate and loathing that it was going to be so bad. Yeah, I used to take these workshops. I took EST and actually all these workshops because I figured I'd get better with these workshops. And there was a thing they called a Kriya. You probably don't know what that is, but some people in the workshops, they would just go bananas. And I thought, uh-oh, it's going to happen to me. So that's what I thought when I did the steps, that I'd probably go nuts and never return. And I've been nuts and I'm still here. So, you know, it's funny. It really is funny. So, Wendy. I can't hear you.
You were amazing.
Oh.
I've known you long enough and have seen the remarkable changes. How did you get rid of that anger you had?
How did I get rid of the anger? Just doing the work. Doing the work day after day after day after day. And then, as I said, my will is that I can do something different in the moment. The facts, the feelings, the options, my motives. And then I would finally, after years, I'd get angry and then I'd say, what is this going to do for me? How is this going to help me? How is this going to serve me? So, and even in the Indian, they say thought, action, reaction. So that's what we have, thought, action, reaction. And if I can, my action and my reaction can be different after the thought. But I still get angry. But I'm not rage. I have no rage. I mean, it's gone. But it takes work. And people like you in my life. I mean, that's what helps. Hi.
Hi, you talked about how growing up in an abusive alcoholic home injured your self-esteem. What helped you regain it?
Well, I had zero self-esteem. Oh, what helped me regain my self-esteem? Well, I had zero self-esteem. I had none at home, but I had some at school. I was very popular and very. That's the last question? Okay. I was very popular and very smart and all of that, so I had some self-esteem at work, so that started. But in personal relationships, I had zip. I had zero. So I did know what feeling good about myself in one area of my life was like, but it's taken me 26 years to like myself and to care about myself and have that self-esteem. Because, the beginning is, that's the foundation. And also to having loving friends. I had jealous friends. I had people that wanted me to fail. I had lots of friends that weren't friends. They were my mother in disguise. And now to have the other kind of friends that want you to be successful and want you to be happy, that helps your self-esteem so much. I think if we all had loving parents, that it might be different. Thanks. Hi. Well, that's it. Okay. Whatever. Thank you.
I think we got a great talk going on here. Thanks for watching the channel. Taper Dave here. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs. Long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, oop, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right, but I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.